But hey, let me ask you guys, how many of you guys like movies? Love movies. Guys, I love movies. Movies are probably my favorite pastime. When before Emily and I actually moved to Clear, we were living in Chelsea every single Sunday from like 4, if you went to a movie between 4:30 and 5:30, it was $5 a movie over at the Rave. We did it every single Sunday. Didn't matter what was playing. We did it. We loaded up we had that little like $5 bucket that you pay for. You don't pay $5 and they fill it all the way up. They don't really have those anymore. But we went over there, and that's all we did. We watched movies. But I love movies because I feel like it's a time that you can just kind of get sucked into a movie. Like you can fall into the fantasy of it. I'm one of those people that when I see it, I believe it. Like whatever it is, like I don't care if it looks fake. I don't care what's going on. Like I get into a movie no matter what's going on, all right? I believe in talking pandas that fight kung fu. I mean, I believe that there's like aliens, all these things. Like I like to get sucked into a movie when I see it. Now, by doing that, I'm also the type of person that don't talk during a movie. Okay? How many of y'all have that like when you're at the movie and you're like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm so pumped to see this movie. Like I'm so excited." And then you know as soon as the movie starts, you hear somebody talking behind you like, "Oh no." Like I got one of those people in the movie theater with me. Like they're going to talk the entire movie. We went to a movie one time. Are you the person that talks all the time in the movie? I went one time. And we had guys, it was like a gang of frat boys behind us. Yeah, like they were packing like polos and everything. Stuff behind us. This one dude, guys, would not quit talking the entire movie. And I got a little bit of a short fuse. I'm thinking and I think we were going to see Ninja Turtles. So you guys know I was jacked. Like I was ready. All right, like I was ready to see it. Okay, and I'm sitting there like, yes, I know they're Ninja Turtles. You don't have to talk about it. Like you can talk about it to your boys afterwards. And he's sitting there talking and talking, and I start making, I'm that jerk that starts making, this is before I met Jesus. So I'm that guy that's making, the rude comments, and I'm like, yeah, I'd like to hear that movie too. And Emily's like, will you shut up? And I'm like, why? It's fine. She's like, you have no idea. People are packing these days. They're carrying guns. I'm like, babe, they're frat boys. They're not carrying anything but loafers and polos. Like, nothing's going on, all right? Like, they're going to be fine. She's like, you need to stop yelling. And so I'm like, babe, I can take them. She's like, there's 6 of them. I was like, it's all right. I got this. And so I keep making these comments. She's like, I'm seriously going to walk out of the movie theater unless you just stop. Like, stop making comments. So when the movie's over, I get up and I was like, thanks, guys, for the movie. That dude's 10 times bigger than I am. And there was 5 of them. Moral of the story is don't yell at anybody during a movie. So, but here's the thing. I love to get soaked into it. Now, also with that, if you're the type of person that sits in a movie and you're like, oh, that wouldn't happen. Oh, that's not real. Like Fast and Furious, I love some Fast and Furious, okay? I know nobody can jump out of a car at 80 miles an hour as the back of the skyline is going over the cliff and still somehow grab the fin or the tail of the car. But it's still cool to see, and I enjoy watching. I'm like, man, I bet you I could do that. I start thinking that way. If you're the type of person that sits there and makes comments about it, it's not gonna happen. I'm gonna fight you. I will fight you. Look, it's a movie. You're here for a reason. Just let it go. It's okay. It's okay that Paul Walker just hit a car going 80 miles an hour and he still looks pretty. All right, it happens. Okay, don't let it get to you. Now, my favorite type of movies are 80s. Okay, 80s movies, some of y'all in here Adam, first of all, I'm not watching that because it's not in 4K Ultra High HD TV. I can't see that. There's lines on the screen. The best movies are the ones you have to put a cassette in. You guys have no idea what that is? It's a cassette. It's a cassette. It's called a cassette, a videotape. You take it, guys, you put it in what's called a VCR, and you press play. There is no fast forward, no jumping to your scene. If you want to see it, you have to fast forward. You have to hit the button, all right? Those, to me, are the best movies. What's so awesome about 80s movies is the music. Yeah. The music, all right? We're talking, electric beats. We're talking, epic movies. If you see, The Breakfast Club, when that movie ends and it tells you, don't you forget about me, that song is epic, all right? Movies today don't have epic music that go to them. And so when you watch these movies, I just love how awesome they are. What I also love about movies in the 80s is they're a little predictable, okay? You know what's going to happen. You know who's going to get the girl. You know who's going to end up, who's going to end up killing who or what. You kind of know, and you know what's going on when you watch these movies. Now, the other best part of the 80s is the quotes. Okay, like they're not, like you don't see movies today that just have these epic quotes like that you repeat. Even your generation knows some of these quotes. So I went through and I went through and wrote down some of the best quotes from the 80s, okay? One of the first ones to me, and I'm not trying to tell you guys to see it, I have seen it because it was a big 80s movie, is Scarface. Everybody knows Tony Montana. He's like, say hello to my little friend. Like, everybody knows that, right? He's got the gun. It's a massive scene in the movie. Back to the Future is also one of my favorites. Doc, every time something happens, great Scott. Like, every time, like, he goes on. Also, Marty McFly, what does he say every single time somebody calls him what? Darn. Oh, my gosh. Seriously, guys? Calls him chicken. He says, nobody calls me chicken. Okay? Every movie, all three of them, somebody calls him a chicken at some point. The other one is Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Like, the old guy, the guy that used to be in the commercials with like the eye drops, he's like, Bueller, Bueller, Bueller. It goes on for like a couple minutes, just yelling his name out. The other one, Dead Poets Society. Oh, Captain, my Captain, right? Like he's leaving the school, yells it out, oh, Captain, my Captain. It's one of the big lines. Another one, Predator. Get to the chopper! Get to the chopper! Like Arnold, I'm a terrible person when it comes to trying to act like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I can't do it. But he yelled, everybody's heard, get to the chopper. And so also, this one's probably for Matt in the back because he is really addicted to this. Star Wars. Yeah! May the Force be with you, okay? For those of y'all that don't know, when you hear May the 4th be with you. Some of y'all that's still clicking right now. The other one, what's the other famous line? See if you guys know from Star Wars. Like the most famous line in the movie. Luke, I am your father, right? Like that's a famous quote. The other one, The Shining. What's the famous quote from The Shining? Here's Johnny. Like, you don't hear that. A couple more I'll give you guys. Field of Dreams. You hear him whispering like, if you build it, they will come. If you build it, they will come. So you hear that repeated over and over again. Another Arnold Schwarzenegger, Terminator. I'll be back, right? I know I told you guys I'm terrible. I sound like I'm Asian or something. Karate Kid. Mr. Miyagi, wax on, wax off. All right. You also remember like the Cobra Dojo when he's got his crane. He's telling him like, sweep the leg, sweep the leg. Like that's at the end of the movie when he's like, sweep the leg, take him out. I got a couple more for you. The Princess Bride. Yes. The Princess Bride. Hello, my name is Antoga Montoya. You killed my father. Now prepare to die. I'm a terrible. I don't do impressions. I know. I don't do impressions. All right, so here we go. Top Gun. I feel the need for speed. Okay, if you've never seen Top Gun, first and foremost, you probably don't have a visa, and you shouldn't be able to be here. It's the most American movie you can find. Okay, epic. It was when Val Kilmer was like real skinny, and he had really tall blonde hair, and like Tom Cruise, before he went crazy. The Breakfast Club. I already kind of mentioned it. But the principle all the time, don't mess with the bull, son. You'll get the horns. Okay, he says it every time. Don't mess with the bull. You'll get the horns. And then the last one of my favorites of all time, is Goonies. Right. Hey, you guys, right? And everybody knows the truffle shuffle. Okay, you gotta do the truffle shuffle. I'm not doing the truffle shuffle. I'm not doing. That is completely inappropriate in front of Jesus. So you should not watch that movie. So, but it's awesome, right? Like you have these epic quotes. Here's the other thing. When you watch these movies from the 80s, you always know that they live like happily ever after. Like every 80s movie ends. It's like it's amazing. Like if you see like You Can't Buy Me Love, at the end of it, Patrick Dempsey, before he became the stupid Grey's Anatomy, when he did that, cutting the lawns, he's in the sunset on the lawnmower. He's got the girl, and they're riding down the street into the sunset, right? Like if you think about Star Wars, it's epic the way it ends. Obi-Wan Kenobi, they're all standing around, seeing Luke Skywalker. He's looking at everybody that's passed on, but everybody just kind of ends happily. They end up living a good life. What's awesome about that is I feel like it doesn't leave you with a cliffhanger. Okay, so many of today's movies leave you with a cliffhanger because they're trying to get you to go to another movie, right? They want to see like the third one, the fourth one. Some movies go way too deep. Like we're on like Fast and Furious number 19, I think. Great movie series, but like way too many of them. I think we're literally on like number 8. But when you see those, you always know it's going to end well. Like, you know it's over. Like, if you look at that list, if you don't name anything like Terminator or Star Wars or anything like that, there was really only one movie. There's only one Top Gun. There's only one Goonies, one Breakfast Club. Like, it's over. It's done. Like, it's epic in its own mind the way it is. But here's the bad side, the flip side of an 80s movie. When it ends on this high, right? Like, this whole movie, it's building, 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 building. It gets to this point, it's this massive, epic high. Well, when it gets to the end, it's like it's just kind of over. Like, it ends on this high point. Like I said, riding off into the sunset. Everybody gets the girl. They kill the bad guy. The alien's dead and all this. It has all this, like, epicness, and then it just kind of ends. But when you watch these movies, what I feel like is it kind of gives you a false sense of reality, right? Like, how many of you ever watch a movie and you kind of wonder, like, okay, so, like, what are they going to end up, like, what happens to them now? Like, did they, like, come back to the house after they rode off on the lawnmower? Like, I mean, did they stay together through college? I mean, like, that's me, okay? I think way too far out of the box. Like, I want to know what went on when you see at the end of the movie. And so, what's the end of the movie when it does that? It's kind of like a high point. It's kind of like a high point in our lives, and it makes you think that it stays that way, that when it's over, you always have this massive, epic point. You know, like when the ship sails off in the end of the Goonies, like, where's it going? Like, nobody's driving that thing, right? Like, when those movies end, you kind of think what's going on. But what I want you guys to kind of think in terms of that is what happens next, okay? You spent this entire movie, you spent a couple hours watching it, it builds, it builds, it builds, it gets epic, it gets awesome. Everything happens. So what happens next? What happens afterwards? And so as I thought about this, I was trying to think what best can describe a spiritual encounter. And that's what I was thinking of with a movie. Is that when we have a spiritual encounter with God, is that it is that. Just think about it. When a movie starts out, sometimes it's good, it's bad, but the whole time it builds. They go through problems, they face things, they deal with things, and then it gets to that point that they have this amazing experience and the movie ends. It's the same way when we have this spiritual experience with God, right? Like, you walk in, you're like, I'm pumped, I experience God, I'm ready to go, like, I feel it, but what happens afterwards? Like, what happens after we have that experience? You can't just go on your whole life living this massive experience that you have. It's not going to work that way. You can't keep feeling that you're on a high with God. And when I was thinking about this, I looked up, like, what is a spiritual encounter? What is it actually defined as? Here's what it says. It says, an experience that leaves a person with a new and profound, everybody say profound sense of awareness and understanding regarding God. So you have this, like, this profound moment. Like, you know in your heart, in your gut, that God is real. Like, you felt God. You heard God. You experienced God. In this moment, you had this profound moment that you know God's there. And so it comes from things like, for instance, like motion. Okay, we went to motion this past week and you experienced it. I mean, it's God's presence was all around. But you don't have to go to something just like a massive student conference to experience God. You can experience God through a Sunday morning. Maybe Pastor Brandon says something to you on Sunday that just resonates with you. Maybe something that you're dealing with or stressing with or fighting through. You can experience God in that moment. You can also sit here and think, like, is he preaching to me solely? Like, does he know what I did this week? But you're in that moment, you experience that. You can experience those type of things simply like, just think if you're in your room and you've had a long week and you're just listening to some worship music and doing some devotion time, you can experience God in that moment. And you can feel him there, and you can have that experience when God is around. And so when we have this experience, sometimes it feels like, okay, I'm here, like I get to stay here. I'm going to be at a high. I'm always going to be up top. I always feel like God's going to be with me. And I've told you guys so many times before, I'm never going to lie to you about things, but when you say that, when you experience that, having that relationship with God, guys, it doesn't get easier sometimes. It gets harder. Here's the reason I say that, because when you have a relationship with God, unfortunately, the world rejects Jesus. The world rejects those things. So when you experience that, when you say, like, all right, I'm making a stand, I'm chasing after God, I'm having a relationship, guys, it actually gets harder because people are going to tell you you're wrong. They're going to question your beliefs. They're going to question why you think that way. They're going to try to put you in situations and say, oh, no, you'll be all right. Just do this. Don't worry about that. It's going to get harder from there. It doesn't get easier when you do that. But if it was easy to have a relationship with God, the entire world would be saved, right? Like everybody would do it if it was easy. So you have this relationship with God. And so when you do that, how do we experience that spiritual encounter? How do we keep ourselves there? How do we kind of know what the process that we're going to go through when we have that relationship with God? And so what I wanted to do was kind of look at that what's next. What comes after an experience with God? Like a true spiritual experience with God. What do we do? What do we say? How do we act? Where do we go? Like, how do I hold on to that? What am I going to feel over the next couple days, the next couple weeks? I mean, it could even be the next couple hours after you have that experience. What am I going to do when those things are around? And so what I wanted to do was take that. I wanted to look at the steps this week that I feel like we kind of go through. I related it to almost having like withdrawals from something, like someone that may have addiction to something, they're trying to withdraw from it. Like what stages do they go through? What do they suffer through? It's the same thing when we have this spiritual experience with God. What are we going to go through over the next couple days? What are we going to see? What are we going to feel? And what are we going to experience? And like I said, it didn't matter if you went to motion or not. You can still experience God. You could experience God tonight. Maybe tonight this message is what you need to hear. Maybe God's saying, hey, look, you're going to be gone next week. You're going to school. You're going to be dealing with this. You're going to be back with your friends. Like, you need to hear this message. You need to hear what's going on. So even that is a way that you can experience God. So I thought about a couple steps. I even thought in my own self, what do I go through? Because, guys, I'm telling you, even as motion was ending, even as we got home, the enemy is attacking. The enemy was coming at us. The enemy was trying to break down everything that we did, even everything that I did, I felt, I prayed about, I experienced over those days. So even in that moment, I tried to think like, okay, what process am I going through? What am I dealing with that I can show these guys, hey, this is kind of what happens. And maybe as I go through this, you'll kind of relate to that and say, okay, I've done that. That kind of happens. That's where I am when I have this spiritual encounter. So the first thing that I feel like we experience after we have this massive experience and encounters, I called it the invincible. The invincible, right? So the invincible, it's this overwhelming, amazing experience, right? Like you just experienced God. Like you heard his voice, you felt him, you saw prayers answered, like the heavens open, like lights are above, everything, like God's there, right? Like you're so jacked about what you just experienced. Guys, you're about to chase down hell with a water pistol. And I'm not talking like super soaker water pistol. I'm not talking like you're putting a backpack on, you got the big pump that you got to pump it a bunch of times and it's going to blow some kid across the street. I'm talking like the little 99-cent water gun that unless you have fingernails, you can't even pull the piece out to fill it with water. So you can just be like, pss, 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 like that water gun. Like you're like, I don't care. I'll go into hell with that. Like I'll chase hell down. I'll put those fires out. That's what I feel like it is because you feel invincible. Now here's the thing is that I felt like this phase is honestly short-lived. It's not one of the longest phases that you're going to feel after you have that spiritual encounter. It's one of the best feelings. It's sweet. It's amazing. It's just you know in your heart like God is real. God is alive. But when you're there, it kind of fades quickly. Like it fades away from you. Even though you say, hey, I feel like this U.S. Navy SEAL, I'm going to come up underwater taking out Satan, like I'm taking on some secret mission, like I'm ready to go. But it just fades quickly. It goes quickly because you get thrown right back into the world, right? Like you're not standing around your friends that are worshiping. You're not in rooms where you guys are talking about like, what did you think about messages? What do you think about this? You're not surrounded by that 24/7. You're surrounded by things that you shouldn't be, or even like friends that'll bring you down. You're surrounded with that. And so that invincibility can fade. That's why I feel like it's one of the fastest. And as I thought about it, I thought, okay, how do we defend it? How do we keep ourselves from losing that? And I thought about Ephesians chapter 6, where Ephesians chapter 6 talks about the armor of God and how we have to protect ourselves. Well, before it really gets into it, here's what it says in chapter 6. It starts out in verse 10. It says, finally be strong in the Lord and his great power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can fight against the devil's evil tricks. Everybody say it. Devil's evil tricks. So you can fight against the devil's evil tricks. Our power is not against people on earth, but against the rulers and authority and the powers of this world's darkness, against the spiritual powers of evil in this heavenly world. When you read that, just real quick, guys, when you see that verse, when you see right there in verse 12, that's telling you guys, you got to stick together. You got to stick together with the people that are in this room. You got to stick together with other believers. You got to stick together with your small group. Don't fall apart from that, because we're not the enemy against each other. We need to be on the same team. We need to be together. We need to love each other. We need to keep each other strong. It finishes up in verse 13 and says, this is why you need to put on God's full armor. Then on the day of evil, you will be able to stand strong. And when you have finished the whole fight, you will still be standing. And you know what's so amazing and or even kind of weird and profound about the armor of God? Have you guys ever noticed that there's just no pants involved? Like, I'm serious. Think about it. Like, there's a chest plate. You got your shield. You got your sword. You got your shoe. You got all that stuff. Like, God, am I supposed to go in against Satan with no pants on? Like, how am I doing this? Like, just doing that. Ha ha. Get it? You guys, okay, y'all aren't even with me. But no, there's no pants in the armor of God. So when you do this, it's like, guys, it's an encounter that you get to have. It's a way that you can feel that. Like I said, it just fades so quickly. You are on this massive high. Like, you're here, you're ready to go, you're ready to storm the gates of hell with a water pistol. But it fades quick. It goes away quickly. See, and you have to understand as well is that life is just full of emotions. We're full of emotions. But it's in our human nature to stay that high all the time. We can't, because we're going to experience things that bring us down. We're going to experience things that hurt us. We're going to experience things that sometimes that even in your own life you may have said, I've questioned God, because why would he let this happen? Why would I deal with it? So this massive high that you're on, you start to come down. So when you do that, so you've been invincible. You felt invincible. You felt like, I'm ready to share the word of God with everybody. But when you start experiencing reality and you get back to reality and you start facing those things, I feel like you come to a stage that I kind of call the yo-yo stage. Okay? The yo-yo stage. The reason I call it the yo-yo stage is because it's kind of like you're torn between right and wrong. Okay? You're up and down, like this is right, this is wrong, this is right, this is wrong. Like, you're faced with all these things. You're faced, what it is as well, is that a part of you is still convicted by the things that God doesn't want you to do. You're still convicted by those things. You still know in your heart, like, I really shouldn't be doing that. I really shouldn't be a part. I really shouldn't go to this party. I really shouldn't spend time with these friends. I really shouldn't go there. You have that conviction, but the up and down part of you is you still do it. Like, you still kind of slide back into that. You still allow yourself to, even though you know I shouldn't. But the hard part is when you slide back into reality, think about it. Guys, you're back with your friends, the people that you spend a lot of time with. And if when you have those friends, we all have friends that don't go to church, that don't spend time around that. And guys, the enemy looks for cracks in your armor. It looks for cracks in that. So when you come, you know what's funny is I heard it said best this weekend, the moment that you make a decision to follow God is the moment that text message pops up, that phone call comes through, that you just randomly run into a friend that you haven't seen in a few weeks, or whatever the case is, whatever you struggle with, the enemy's like, oh my goodness, they're fighting back. Like, I've got to get in there. I got to find a crack in the armor. I got to find something to draw them back to me. So with friends, we have that. That friend says, hey, come to a party. It'll be fun. You'll enjoy it. It'll be crazy. It'll be the biggest party of the year. Or you could maybe you have like a bad family relationship that you don't get along with your family at home, and you have issues with that, and they just come up. Like, maybe it's been weeks since you've had trouble, but the moment you come home from a big experience, and the moment that you feel like you've had this spiritual encounter with God, the enemy attacks. The enemy brings in and just brings all those things back up. Maybe you're in a bad relationship with somebody. Maybe you have somebody that's pressuring you to do things like have sex or go and do other things that you shouldn't. They've been pressuring you. And so when you come back, you feel that. You feel that pressure to give in. You feel that pressure just to do it because you're getting pressure from there. Again, it's that up and down. You know it's not right. You know you shouldn't, but you're just kind of stuck in between. You feel like I got to slide back into that, or just whatever situation that you guys are encountered in, you get stuck there, even though that you know in your heart God's real. God's told me what's right. God's told me what's wrong. When I was thinking about this, I thought about my own self. When I was in college, I attended a church on the other side of town, and I wasn't as involved as I should have, mainly probably because, guys, like, you walk into that church, and it's like a breeding ground for dating, okay? Like, I went there the first day, and that night, I'm not a catch, okay? I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, Emily downgraded, okay? So Emily downgraded when she married me. So I'm not a catch. I'm not thinking I am. I'm not like, oh yeah, the ladies love me. That's not what I'm thinking at all, okay? I walked into the church that night, and I promise you, I had at least 2 or 3 messages like, hey, so are you single? Like, you've been coming to the church long? Like, hey. Like, that's what it was. Like, it's like, it was a church. Like, if you saw somebody they knew was single walk in, and like, we got to find out if that man, 1, knows God, and 2, if he's not seeing anybody, I got to jump on that. Like, I got to start dating that guy. So that's why I probably didn't get as involved as I should have. But the church, I just didn't find a connection to it. But one time that I did have a connection, I went on a trip with them. We went whitewater rafting. It was amazing. I stayed in the cabin with some guys that I got really close to, but I still never just like connected to it. But we spent that whole weekend worshiping, doing Bible studies, just learning in depth. And I felt God that weekend. I felt that he was real. I felt that he was there, and I experienced that. And so it was only a couple days long, and when we finished and we got back from Tennessee, we got back, and that very night I got home, I remember getting a phone call from some of my buddies that I've been hanging out with. Say, hey, we're going to go to the bar. We're going to go hang out. Why don't you come with us? It'll be fun. We'll go do this. We'll go drink. We'll have fun. And, of course, you guys know what I did. All right, I'll be there. It's cool. I immediately knew in my heart, I just spent this whole weekend experiencing God. I spent this whole weekend with a community of people that love me, that love God, that want to invest in me. But I just fell away. Like, I fell right back into it just like that. It was so easy. So I knew in my heart what was right. I knew in my heart what I should and shouldn't be doing, but I didn't take to that. And see, here's the thing is that God doesn't want flaky Christians. Like, God doesn't want somebody that's going to say, well, I'll be a Christian when it benefits me here, but, when I've got that party or something I want to attend, then I'm going to kind of just like put God to the backside. Actually in Revelations, like, God calls us out on this. God actually tells us, look, I would rather you either be as close to me as possible, or I would rather you be as far away from me as possible. I don't want you in the middle. If you're in the middle, if you're standing on the fence with me, I don't need you. I don't want you there. I need you either one or the other. That's why I told y'all sometimes it's not easy to follow Christ. But he's saying, look, if you love me, buy into it. Buy into all of it. Don't buy half into it. Don't listen to what half of I say. Listen to everything. I want you guys to underline this verse. It's Revelation chapter 3. It's verses 14 through 16. Like, God just calls us out and says, look, I'm not going to have a flaky Christian. I'm not going to have a half-hearted Christian. Here's what he says. The faithful and true witness the ruler of God has made. He says this, I know what you do. So God's saying, like, look, I know what you're involved in. I know where you go. I know what you say. I know what you do. That you are not hot or cold. I wish you were hot, or I wish you were cold, but because you choose to be lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth. So God tells us, look, it's either one or the other. Either be all the way out and just don't have a relationship with me, or I need you all the way in, bought in 100%. Don't sit the fence. Don't be in the middle. That's this yo-yo phase that we have. We get stuck in this place where we feel like it's okay to make decisions sometimes and here and there, but that's what we experience after we have this spiritual encounter with God. Here's the issue when you're at the yo-yo stage. Is a lot of times, and you may be able to relate to this, but when you make a mistake, we blame it on that. Like, we say, oh my goodness, God, I made a mistake. God, I made another mistake. God, I made a mistake. I didn't mean to. It was a mistake. And we overuse that word mistake. Here's what I want you to take, and I want you to write this down, is that when you make a mistake more than once, guys, it's not a mistake. It's a choice, okay? When you make a mistake more than once, you're making a choice to do that. You're making a choice to say, God, even though I know you're real, I'm still going to do this. You can't blame it on a mistake. You can't say, God, it was an accident. I slipped up. I didn't mean to. Guys, it's a choice. We choose to turn our backs on God. We choose not to follow God. We can't use our mistakes as a way to just stay away from God. We can't use our mistakes as a way to hide away from what we're actually doing. So after a spiritual encounter, you feel invincible, like nobody can beat you, nobody can take you down. You move to this yo-yo stage, right? Like you move to this, like I'm in and out, I'm lukewarm, I'm not hot, I'm not cold, I know God's real, but I make these decisions, so you're kind of stuck here. But what it leads to is what I call the letdown. It leads to the letdown. The letdown it's that point in your life where, guys, you know that you're kind of like buying in. You're buying in back into reality. You're falling back into reality. You're falling back into your friends, into your home life, or whatever it is. You're falling back into all those things. And why I call it the letdown is, guys, not only are you letting down yourself, the promise that you made to yourself when you had that spiritual encounter, guys, you're letting down God. You're letting down Christ. You're letting down maybe you sat there and said, God, I'll do this. You raised your hands and you said, God, if this is your will, whatever it is, speak to me. I'm here. This is what I'll do. But guys, you end up turning your back completely. You've moved so far away. It's not just a good decision, bad decision. You've moved back into your old lifestyle. It's like you're on this roller coaster. It's like you're at this high, and now you're just right back to where you started. And so you have what they call the letdown. You make a commitment to being with God. You slip back to your own life. You slip back to the way you were. And you know what's so crazy about the letdown is how fast it comes. How fast you move back to it. I told you guys, as soon as we got back from motion this week, Emily and I were already dealing with stuff. Like, we knew that the enemy was attacking. The enemy was coming at us. We just had this amazing weekend. I felt like our foundation with you guys was built. It was amazing. We had so much fun. I felt like we were stronger. We were bigger than we ever were before. But I felt like the enemy was like, I can't allow this. I can't let this to happen. And so right away, the enemy's trying to take to us. And as I thought about this, I was trying to think in the Bible, like, what's a story that can relate to someone that's on a spiritual high, someone that loves God so much but falls so far away from him. And the best example that I could think about was Peter. Think about Peter. Think about the life that Peter had. Peter's one of those that turned his back on God. Think about where he was. Think about who he was. If you guys, I want you to go ahead and turn to Luke 22 for me. If you're in your Bibles, if you got your Bible, go ahead and turn to Luke 22. While we're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and invite our band to come back up. And I just want to look at this one last story where we talk about Peter. In Luke 22, what's going on is it's kind of like it's the Last Supper. Like, Jesus is explaining what's going on. He knows that his fate is sealed. He knows that his time on this earth is coming to a close. And Peter is sitting there with him, and Peter's like homeboys with Jesus, right? Like Peter's like, yo, Jesus, I'm your ride or die. Like, I'll take a bullet for you. I'll do whatever it is. I'll jump into a lion pit. Like, I'm not going to let nothing happen to you. I'll stand in between you if somebody's got beef with you. Like Jesus, I got you, okay? Nothing's going to happen to you. But what's so crazy is that he says all these things he's going to do for Jesus, that he says, I am with you. He's at a spiritual high right now, guys. He's all the way up top. He's in that invincible stage. Like, nothing can defeat me. Nothing can take me down. He's standing up there on top. If you look in verse 33, chapter 22, Peter says to Jesus, Lord, I am ready to go to prison with you. I will even die with you. You know what's funny is that this next part, I always wondered, like, what went through Peter's mind? Like, if you were Peter, when he said that to Jesus, like, yo, Jesus, I'm in, like, ride or die, I got you, nothing's going to happen. I always want to know, like, what went through Peter's mind? Jesus replied to him, Peter, before the rooster crows this day, you will say 3 times that you do not know me. Guys, how many times in your life do you do that? How many times in your life have you had that spiritual experience that you tell God, I'm with you 100% from start to finish? But God knows in his heart, you're going to mess up. You're going to fall short. You're probably even going to deny me just like Peter. Think about it, guys. Like, Peter's one of his disciples. Peter's one of his inner circles. Like, they've been friends from the beginning. And Peter, even somebody that's as close to Jesus as that, is still struggling with things today. He's struggling with what he goes through. So what ends up happening if you drop down to verse 57, obviously they've taken Jesus. He knows it's coming to the end. And so people start noticing Peter. They start noticing who he is. And so if you look in verse 57, like, Peter gets called out. Like, Peter gets called out by some random woman. And she tells Peter, like, hey, you're with Jesus. You've been with Jesus before. And Peter replies, woman, I don't know you. Okay, so that's number one. Peter says, I don't know you. I don't know him. That's the first time. Okay, Jesus told him 3. So he says, one time, I don't know who he is. So again, another person sees Peter. And sees Peter and says, you're also with them. Down in verse 58. But Peter said, man, I am not. You gotta imagine that guy's like, yes it is. I saw you on Instagram. I saw y'all together. I saw y'all hanging out the Sea of Galilee when he did all the stuff with the fishes and bread. I know that Jesus is your homeboy. Second time Peter says, no, it's not. I don't know who he is. If you guys continue down in verse 60, he gets called out once more. Certainly this man was with him because he is from Galilee too. Peter says, man, I don't know what you're talking about. Guys, that's number 3. 3 times, just like Jesus said, he denied who he was. At once, while Peter was speaking, a rooster crowed. Then the Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. And Peter remembered what the Lord had said, before the rooster crows on this day, you will 3 times say that you do not know me. So Peter went out and cried. Guys, Peter had an amazing love for God. Peter experienced, honestly in my mind, like a spiritual experience like no other. Guys, he sat at the table with Jesus. He saw Jesus. He felt Jesus. He experienced Jesus. But he still said, I don't know him. And guys, that's where we are with our spiritual life sometimes, is when we have this spiritual encounter. We're here. We've seen him. We know he's there. We felt him. We everything that you can think of encompassed into one. You know that God is real. But when you're faced with turmoil, when you're faced with death, when you're faced with things that you don't want to be a part of, or faced with things that are hard, you turn into this like downward spiral. And you just deny Jesus, and you say, you spend all these days loving Jesus, saying you have him, but when it gets hard, you're like, hey, JK, I'm just kidding. Like, I don't really know who you are. I can't be that person that's made fun of. I can't be that person that experiences those things. But you know, I was thinking about the letdown. I was thinking about that phase that we get back to when we get farther from that spiritual experience. And what's so awesome is I honestly think the letdown's a good thing. The letdown's a great thing, because here's the thing, is that the letdown shows that God can take your heart, that God can break it into pieces, and that God can use you to weather through the storm. Is that even those things that you go through, God is still going to use you no matter what. Peter loved God, denied him 3 times, watched his best friend hang on a cross for his sins, and did you guys know Jesus still forgave him? When I read these things, what it tells me for you guys is that if this is you, if you've gone through that, if you've experienced that, guys, you may have already experienced it. Those of you that went to Motion this past week, you may have already fallen far from the tree. Like, we're not even 3 or 4 days out from something amazing, and you've probably already fallen from that. You've probably already made a mistake. You've probably already told Jesus that you don't believe in him, that he's not real because of something you've experienced. As I was reading through that, I was trying to find something that would help you guys understand that no matter what, God is with you. God loves you, and God will forgive you. I thought about Psalms chapter 73. I want you guys to write this one down. We're going to jump all the way down to verse 21, and here's what it says. Psalm 73, verse 21. When my heart was sad and I was angry, I was senseless and stupid. I acted like an animal towards you. But I'm always with you, and you have held my hand. You guide me with your advice, and later you will receive me in honor. I have no one in heaven but you. I want nothing on this earth besides you. My body and my mind may be weak, but God is my strength. He is mine forever. Those who are far from God will die. You will destroy those who are unfaithful, but I am close to God, and that is good. The Lord God is my protection, and I will tell all that you've done. So guys, as you sit here tonight, if you've ever had a spiritual encounter, if you ever get to the point where you have that feeling like God is real, God is there. Guys, you're probably going to slide back down the hill. It's nature. I can tell you right now, even as your student pastor, I've got plenty of times that I've slid down the hill after climbing all the way to the top of it and feeling like I've made it. But even right here in Scripture, you can see even somebody like Peter, who watched their best friend die, God can still use you. God can still love you. And God can still forgive you. I'm going to ask you guys to go ahead and bow your heads with me tonight. With all heads bowed and all eyes closed, I want you guys just to kind of think about your own life. Think about what's going on with you. Think about what you're dealing with. Think about what you're stressing in. Think about where the enemy has already taken you out. Think about where you guys are getting ready to go back to school. Think about what all things that the enemy is throwing at you. Maybe maybe the enemy's throwing temptation at you. Maybe enemy's throwing turmoil between friends. Maybe the enemy's throwing alcohol or drug abuse or anything at you. How are you going to respond to it? Because guys, I promise you can't do it alone. I promise you can't walk through this life, guys, without the people that are sitting to your left and to your right. Because I can tell you the people that sit to your left and your right are going to help you through it because they're going to experience the same thing you do. But most of all, the person that you can't walk through this life without, the person that you can't not fight every one of these things without, guys, is a relationship with Jesus Christ. The man that hung on a cross for our sins, that didn't care that he suffered, that he hung there, that he thirsted, that he was stabbed and spit on and made fun of, that this man stood there for you to wipe away every single sin that you have. Guys, I want you to turn over a new leaf. School's just around the corner. How are you going to walk in Tuesday morning? What are you going to be like when you walk through those doors? Are you going to be the same person you were when you walked out of them? Are you going to be somebody totally different? And guys, tonight's the night that you can make that decision. If you've never asked Jesus to be a part of your life, if you've never asked him into your heart to open yourself up to him, guys, tonight is the night. Prepare yourself. Get ready. School's around the corner. Be the light in a dark world. Be the ones that can show everybody that you walk through the halls with that there is something different about you. And when they ask, you can say, it's because I have a relationship with Jesus Christ. So guys, if you're sitting here today and you're ready for that commitment, if you're ready to take that on, I told you it may not be the easiest thing, but I promise you it'll be the most fulfilling, life-changing, spiritual encounter that you'll ever have. With all heads bowed and all eyes closed, nobody's looking around. If you're ready for a commitment, if you're ready to have that, if you've never truly said, Jesus, enter my heart. I'm here. I'm open. I'm ready for you. I challenge you tonight. Just slip your hand up. Nobody's looking. Nobody can see. Say, that's me. Say, I'm ready for that. I see the hand. I see that one. That's awesome, guys. Even if you're ready to say, I'm going to be different when I walk into school, just slip your hand up for me to say, I've got a week to get ready. I see those hands. That's awesome, guys. God, I raise up these students to you today. As they get ready to go back to school, God, as they're going to be faced with these things, as we have students even today that have felt you, they've seen you, they've know you exist, they've heard from you, but God, they're in that stage where they're slipping back. They're going back to where they came from. God, I ask that you walk through the trials, the tribulations with them. Show them that you're there. Show them that, hey, look, even though you slip up, I'm still going to use you. Even though you mess up, I still love you. It's not a one and done thing. It's not, I mess up one time and it's over. God will never love me. No, it's I'll mess up 100 times and God will still love me 1,000 times over. God, I ask as Tuesday comes, as they walk into these schools, God, that there's something different about them, God, that you use them to change this community, change their school, God. I believe in this generation that they are strong, that they are passionate, that, God, they want to chase after you with everything that they have. God, in your holy name we pray. Amen.